Welcome back to the season 5 edition and first episode of The Sounds of the Baskerville. I'm here with Chris Baskerville. How are you, Chris?
Good morning, James. It's great to be back.
I feel quite distant from you today, Chris, but anyway, maybe that's a good thing. Today we're joined by special guest Ginette Muller, who is the principal of GM Advisory. Hi, Ginette. How are you?
Hi, James. Hi, Chris. Lovely
Good
to
morning.
be here.
So, Chris, we've talked about this before, but when's the right time for someone to say, hey, Chris, come fix me? Like, because SBR, for example, when is that? Is it, hey, I've got a letter from the tax office, or when's the time that they call you?
Usually within 2 days of a DPN expiring.
Seriously, I suppose the reality is there is no client like that. They're not experts in pre-restructuring or restructuring, so they need a trusted advisor to help them navigate this field, to tell them what's going to be necessary, what the journey is going to be like. And so they need to come to someone like myself or you, James, to basically work out what tax return needs to be done, how they get themselves match fit. I think that was the term you used, Chris, and I couldn't agree with that more. Otherwise, it's just going to be a waste of time because there's such a short period of time within the small business restructuring, even if you take into account the extension that the restructuring practitioner will give you if you've got a valid reason for asking for one and they think it's in the company's interest to grant it. It's still, better off getting all of your tax returns up to speed and all the rest of it. There'll always be something that's not quite ready and not quite right. And so I think you need that time beforehand, before you actually sign on the dotted line, to get yourself organised.
And why is like a pre-restructuring advisor, why do they step in? Why can't the accountant, in your experience, why can't accountants get them match fit? Or are they the people doing a lot of the actual legwork under the direction?
Oh, look, don't get me wrong. They have a very important role, the accountants. They need to prepare the financial statements, make sure all of that is accurate, true and correct. They need to lodge any outstanding tax returns, for example. But they don't really have that insolvency knowledge. They don't know what's avoidable transaction. They don't know, they're not a generalist in a sense, which is what someone like myself is, who's got a little bit of experience in everything, who can see what the company needs and to put all of those pieces in place, so that basically a project manager, for want of a better word, but with those skills over a lot of different areas, whether it's tax, law, insolvency, accounting, etc. You just need to be able to take your client's hand and guide them in the right way to get them to where they need to be as quickly as possible, so that they can come and make the appointment to the restructuring practitioner, and that it is a smooth process after that.
And my experience is if they've met someone like Ginette beforehand, who's obviously gotten a match fit in readiness, then it's a really smooth process from bang to bullets, as they say. Here's the sign here, let's go. But if a director comes to us directly because they've obviously got the tingling in the waters that this is something they might be inclined to accept, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get them ready, because like what Ginette was saying, there's so many things that need to be ready and lodged, or in the precipice of being ready to lodge. And also the calculation of the $1 million eligibility debt level is the big one, because a company could be hovering really close to that $1 million. And what you haven't factored in is work cover. You haven't factored in payroll tax. You haven't factored in what happens when all the tax lodgements actually get lodged. How does that influence the $1 million threshold? Because if you go $1 over that $1 million, you're out. You're out of the game. So it does take a few weeks to get someone ready.
We've talked about this a lot. People should get in touch early. Because, if you're in a business that's contemplating small business restructuring or something bigger like a voluntary administration, you're possibly on what's called like a burning platform, or your iceberg is shrinking, or whatever cliche you want. There's probably a fair bit of pressure on you already. But now we're saying, hang on, I've got to go and see somebody else first. Are you saying that's more because you'll get a better outcome at the end if it's been done right the first time? What's the story?
The challenge that everybody in advisory land lives is that the directors are in denial for a long time. So in other words, they take a long time to get to the point where I need help, because they very proud people. They've started a business. It's their other baby. You know, they got natural born children. Now you got a business, and they think they can steer the ship, turn it around themselves without expert help.
So how do we get people to speak to somebody like you, Ginette, before the problem happens? Like, so it's easy to. I'm not saying Chris isn't a big bad. He's not the big bad wolf. He's a guy who likes to help people turn it around and fix stuff. But we've talked about this in previous episodes. Your role's quite constrained, isn't it? Like you've got to be independent.
Independent and objective is how we start the process, and if we're not, then we're out. You know? So in other words, I really can't know too much about the history, the background of the company,
which is crazy in some senses because of all the knowledge, and that's part of the reason why we've got this episode.
I often say that we start with an unfair disadvantage, which is we have no idea what's happened to the company, and we have to now discover it.
So that's because of the interesting and unique position that liquidators and small business practitioners and registered liquidators generally find themselves in. You know, they are sort of trying to be impartial in a sense. They're acting for creditors unknown, yet they're being appointed by a director to do the, well, in the case of small business restructuring, they're actually an agent of the company, but in a liquidation, they're actually acting for the creditors and not for the director. So they've got this role that's sort of a public good role, and they've got to be seen to be independent, and they must be independent. And so they can't actually be giving the director advice if they're a liquidator. Now, it's kind of similar with small business restructuring, but not quite, because this is new legislation, relatively speaking. We got it in 2021, and it's opened the door somewhat to allow them to be more advisors. So the small business restructuring practitioner, once appointed, has an obligation to assist the company to put together a plan and to do a few other things, to notify creditors of the restructuring proposal and to investigate the affairs to the extent that certain things that the company can meet the restructuring proposal plan, that's number one, and that the eligibility criteria has been met, which is what Chris was talking to before about the $1 million and the other bits and pieces there. So yes, they have this foot in both camps position, which is just the way it falls, which is why the directors might want to have that other voice, whether it's their accountant, their lawyer, or maybe a pre-restructuring advisor or director advocate like myself.
It's kind of all of the above, what I would have thought. I mean, if we think about some of the conversations we've had where there's been a lawyer involved, an accountant, it's going to go to Chris, but it's not there yet because there's a few things that have to happen.
I know it's starting to sound expensive, but it's complicated, right? These things are, and unfortunately, we're dealing with corporate insolvency law. It's not a walk in the park. Unfortunately, you find yourself in this situation. Yes, you are going to need this sort of expert guidance. Hopefully, first and last time you'll have to experience it, touch wood. But yes, what small business restructuring enables you to do is to put a pin in it, put a line and say, reset, and let's not come back here again. And that's what we all hope can be achieved with nearly 2,500 appointments in 2024. Certainly it's starting to get out into the community. People are using it. From what I've seen, anecdotally, I can say it's a very good service and product, if you want to call it that, that small business are utilising, and that's supported by a great lot of creditors in the community. This year, we expect more of the same this year, I think?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the general ASIC data, so corporate insolvency finished 30 June 2024 above the highest level ever seen since the GFC. So we go back to 2008 and beyond. 30 June 2024 finished above that. But the numbers subsequent to June are showing that we're going to break that record again. So in other words, this next 2025 year is going to be very significant. But also, if SBR is 25% of the workload that's coming in, then there's thousands coming.
So that's an interesting question. Is the proportion of SBRs as the rest of your day job, is it more of your day job coming forward, or is your day job going to have all the VAs and voluntary administrations and insolvencies and bankruptcies?
You're a practitioner specialising in small business restructuring. It might be 90% of your day.
Indeed.
And there's a few out there that do that. But if you just look at all corporate insolvency as a pie chart, if you carve out 25%, that's where SBR is going to live at the moment.
And we go back to our last, in fact, that was our last episode of 24. We were trying to predict the future. I think it's probably early days yet, but I think, did you get appointed in the middle of the Christmas holidays, or did you actually have a Christmas holiday?
Yeah, I actually did have a Christmas break, so thank you. And then as soon as we got back, there were 4 appointments ready to go. So
if I remember, Ginette, wearing your hat, didn't you suddenly, straight after Christmas Day, got a little present to...
Oh, yes. The day before Christmas, yes, we had to do, appointments, VA appointments during that period, just because client couldn't wait, expiring statutory demands, etc. So, they had to do what they had to do. So
I think we've definitely gone around, as I suppose, I digress a bit, but we've gone beyond the fad. SBRs are as imperfect as we've discussed sometimes before the legislation is. There's always things that could be improved. There's a few bits that we've sort of had to kind of figure out as we went along, but they're here to stay. So if I circle back to you, Ginette, if Chris has got a statutory period of 4 weeks plus another, say, was it 20 business days, another
plus
10.
Another 10 business days, extension if needed. Yep.
But there's no restraint on you at all. Someone could talk to you for 12 months.
And they have.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's like, they'll continue to do what they need to do, that they know that they need this help. I can't force a person to, appoint Chris, or I can't force their accountant to hurry up and put this particular client at the top of the list for lodging their tax returns. But, in a sense, they are stuck because they need their tax returns lodged. And so I'll give my specific example of a client was where, I'm talking to them and I'm asking them for their tax returns. They haven't done their tax returns, one thing or another, whether they can't afford to pay their accountant or their accountant is just saying, haven't given me enough information. These things start off as a 3-month delay, end up in a 6-month delay. Other things are happening all the time. They want to do a restructuring, but there is no point referring them to Chris without all of these I's dotted and T's crossed, because they'll just fail the process. The tax office will refuse. Where's your tax return? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Why haven't you paid your superannuation, etc.? So they have got to fix up all of these problems and start becoming a better corporate citizen to basically entitle them to enter the restructuring process.
To ask their creditors, do I deserve another chance? Cut me some slack. So you've got to sort of almost... You've got to meet, you've got to kind of deserve it.
I've got to train them in a sense to be better at running their business. If they really see a long-term future in it, well, start lodging your BASs on time, get your tax return done, collect your debtors, stop entering into unprofitable contracts, etc., etc. Because how else are you going to go forward in the future, even if we are lucky enough to get a restructuring proposal up and plan up? So these are the types of every client's different, of course, but these are the types of conversations that you have, which take some time.
And the team, Chris, at the tax office, they're astute. If you're then as SBRP asking them to cut a deal for 80 cents, cut off 80 cents in the dollar, you've done some large ones. We've talked about ones nearly $1 million worth of tax debt. You've been able to negotiate a deal. There's got to be a good reason for it.
Yeah, in the early days of SBR, let's call it the first year, there was very little SBR, and so it was all decided by one bloke within the ATO, and we got to know the guy's name very, very closely, and he'd be the guy we'd contact 5 days out before we have to issue our report, and we'd say, can you give us an idea of what you think about this proposal? He goes, I like it, or can you get a few more cents, or can you just get the directors to write off, so much of their debt. And so we had that.
What are the criteria for what is the criteria for failure? If you won't tell us the criteria for success, at least give us the failure one so that, we can advise clients not to pursue that path.
It is a good point, and that's the challenge. Is directors are saying, well, what does the proposal need to look like in order to win? And we say, well, it seems to be a moving target. Once upon a time, 20% used to be the baseline return to creditors, and you win the hearts and minds of the ATO with good compliance history. Now it looks like that's been pushed up to about 30%, and they're also starting to take a view on certain industries they're just not supporting.
And also I'd like to sort of know what's good compliance and what's bad compliance. I mean, if you consider 18 months ago, I had some terrible compliance of directors who improved their game. We just get them match fit, but they've improved. And now you do the same thing, and that's considered poor compliance.
Yeah, what's the definition of poor compliance? Yeah.
And I suppose that's part of, again, would be argument to see someone such as a pre-restructuring advisor to at least, if you're not going to go to an SBRP straight away, then you can start getting your house in order as quickly as it shows some track record of behaviour.
Start lodging your BASs on time, start paying them, at least do that whilst you're getting the rest of your house in order, because that's part of getting your house in order. That's part of being a good corporate citizen, complying with your director's governance, your director's obligation.
Ginette, that's a really different job from someone like a business consultant who comes in and says you should sell more of these and these shots. It's not that job. It's not like a turnaround.
No,
job.
that's not what I do.
Yeah, it's a completely different job, isn't it? It's not that's just about getting you ready for a process and being eligible and putting you in the best frame to be able to get Chris to be able to do his job and his team to do the job.
That's what I'm focused on when I'm doing my job. Certainly, I might have some conversations with the accountant, particularly the management accountants that I deal with who a client will have engaged, and they might look at different product lines and things of that nature. But, it's all part of it, of getting to the bottom of what's not necessarily me doing the job, but pointing out to the client, I think you need that. If you haven't already got one of those, you need one of those. Or do you need a lawyer to pursue some debts that are outstanding to you? Having a poor collection rate, that's not good either. So there's a little bit of everything, but no, I won't go and write the letters or collect the debts for the client, and I certainly won't be doing the management accounting either. It's really the corporate governance piece, the making sure it ticks all the boxes for Chris. And, supporting the client through this process, because the other thing you've got to remember is people are actually really scared of insolvency. They think that, it's liquidator's going to come and do, terrible things and all the rest of it. It's like, no, it's debtor in control. You will be remaining in control of your business when you go through this process. You'll continue to trade. Of course, you mustn't enter into transactions outside the ordinary course of business, but put a good case to Chris, and I'm pretty sure he'll approve it. So, if you had to do that.
Yeah, I've had to approve outside the ordinary course payments or events. So, yeah, and usually it was relating to surplus assets that the company didn't need, so which technically is outside the ordinary course. Your job is to run your business, profit, loss, expenses, but selling assets is outside.
Just to round this off, we understand where Ginette might be really, really critical in terms of the ideal scenario. So I've got a bit of a problem, gone to their accountant or their lawyer and said, hey, I need some help. And so, okay, well, I think you need to go and see Chris Baskerville. But first go see Ginette and she'll set you right. What happens if they've got a director's penalty notice and it's about to expire? Then Ginette doesn't have a lot of time to really be helpful, but there's still a role for you in that scenario, is there, Ginette, or not?
Perhaps not. I mean, other than holding the hand for a day, if depends when the expiry is, they really need Chris almost immediately, because those director penalty notices require immediate action, generally speaking, don't they?
Yeah, the once upon a time, director penalty notices used to have the ability where you can just enter into a payment arrangement when the notice had been given, and that was enough to remit the penalty. And too many accountants out there still think that's relevant. And so, but it's no longer relevant, just to cast everyone's mind and put doubt aside. You've only got 4 options: pay the tax bill, put into liquidation, put a small business restructuring in place, or start a voluntary administration. That's it. There's no more. There's no extension to the 21-day DPN notice. There's no way to challenge the notice per se. It's just you got 21 days to act. And
So
that's it.
other than paying the debt in full, you need him.
Yeah.
It's that straightforward.
But it's battle stations for us. If we end up with a director that's got 24 hours before an expiry, and this happens in our day-to-day life, it's all right. It's battle stations. There's a lot of things that need to be done in a very, very short period of time.
So I think a director listening to this, or an accountant who's got a client who knows that this is on the table, be it VA or in this case small business, they can talk to you, Ginette, anytime. They can talk to you about where they're up and what they want to do. There's no harm in having a match fit business coach in that sense, coaching them or helping them get ready to be match fit. If coach is perhaps the wrong word. But that's a conversation that should start as soon as possible. Always knowing that if it, and I suppose, Chris, if there's people that you, I suppose, occasionally would have to say you're not ready. Would that be something that you would?
I've used this analogy a few times, but you imagine the Super Bowl and imagine you got your Tom Brady as your first string quarterback.
Yeah.
We're like the 4th string quarterback that gets called in, but we get called in with 1 minute to go. And someone has to go and throw a Hail Mary. And that's what it feels like, which is that you've gone through this advisor, this trusted advisor, this lawyer, this accountant, and finally you've come to us as probably the only person that has the ability to throw this Hail Mary for you, but you've given it to us with a minute to go in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, we step up to the mark and we'll have a hell of a crack at it, don't get me wrong. But geez, wouldn't it be nice if they were well prepared and well trained before we started the game?
It's not ideal. And it reduces the chances of success. And what we all want, and what the company wants, what the directors wants, and I'm sure what the creditor wants, is improvement of chances of success and best possible return to creditors. And how do you do that? Get more organised and do it early.
Makes sense.
Pretty
What a good place to start the beginning of the year. Get organised. We've been told, Chris, the sound of the basketball. We'll try and see if we can run one to a script next time. Thanks very much, Ginette, for joining us again and for the first episode for 2025. And Chris, same time next week. Thanks again.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Ginette.
Thanks. Bye.